Noise is a problem, especially, of course, when you live in New York City or anywhere in the tri-state for that matter. It affects our lives in many ways. Now, in 1972, the city adopted a noise code, and now, for the first time in over 30 years, the city is getting ready to overhaul that comprehensively. Right now, it is against the law for any person to cause any unreasonable noise, except where the decibel level is within the limits prescribed by law. So, what is unreasonable and what are the legal limits? Joining us this morning to help us learn more about answers to those questions and other things are our guests. Dr. Arlene Bronzaff, she is a psychologist and an expert on noise. She is also on the board of the Council on the Environment of New York City. Also with us this morning, attorney Robert Bookman. He represents the New York Nightlife Association. Good morning to both of you. Thanks for joining us. Well, let's just start with what I was just saying. So what does constitute unreasonable, and what are the legal limits? I'll let you guys take it away.
Unfortunately, what constitutes unreasonable is all too often what an inspector or a police officer wants to say is unreasonable. And violations are issued to small businesses on an ongoing basis, and we often don't have specific standards for many of the sections of the noise code.
So you're saying it's sort of arbitrary?
Some of sections are, and some of the more serious sections are not. There have always been standards, and the new noise code is attempts to make those actually tougher. But there's always been an element in this 30-year-old noise code which is arbitrary and enforced in an arbitrary way.
All right, Dr. Bronzaff, go ahead.
I disagree with that. You see, the issue of reasonableness is one that I'm very concerned about. And in the law, we do ask the question, would a reasonable person be upset by these noises? Does a person of reasonable sensitivities feel this noise is offensive? And reasonableness is upheld in the law. And I don't think that the inspectors of the City of New York are going around to penalize individuals. I'd hate to think that way. I also feel that people should understand when you live in the City of New York, we do have restaurants, we do have nightclubs. We also have Yankee Stadium that we'd like to see loud because it means the Yankees are winning. And we do have parades, and we have all these wonderful sounds. But when you come home, in your home, you expect some peace and quiet. And so what I ask is this a noise that a person of reasonable sensitivities would find offensive?
But who is that person is the question.
Well,
I would argue we're all reasonable.
Well, and I would like you to join me at some of the administrative hearings, because at your level of, of your high level of expertise is one thing. I deal with the reality of the street, and in the real world, when you go to an administrative hearing at the Environmental Control Board and you have this per diem hearing officer and you have the inspector or the police officer present, we're not having a lofty discussion of what a reasonable person might consider. What they're basically saying is, I heard your sound, it bothered me, and you're guilty. That's the real world of the hearings.
And then I deal with the people who have reported those sounds, and they say they haven't reached the decibel level that the code insists that it reaches.
And sometimes they have not.
You know what I would really like to say is a person, who's very concerned about data and who worked on this new code.
Right.
I would really like to see the number of violations that have been issued to the people you say are getting these violations so readily. I'd like to see the numbers. I'd like to see how they were written up. I'd like to see whether indeed it was arbitrary or not based on a decibel level. What I find with the people who've objected to the new code and the section that particularly affects the restaurants and the nightlife is they keep saying we have been so penalized. Well, if you've been penalized, then demonstrate this. Demonstrate the numbers of violations under the old code. Demonstrate that they were indeed held up. Don't just say it. Show it in data, and I've never been able to get that.
Easy. Well, since you're the hired consultant for the city,
I'm not the hired because I do this as a volunteer, non-paid individual who has served for 4 mayors.
Well, the data...
You put in the hours I do as non-paid.
The data is with... But you helped draft this new noise code. We did not. The data is with the city agencies who issue the violations and adjudicate the violations. They have the data.
No,
if that's a concern for you, ask for it. They'll provide it to you. They won't provide it to us, believe me.
But your people, the people who pay the fines, And I would think that if I were laying out some money, I would have a record of how much money I'd pay the city. And I would like to sit down with the people that say that we have been so severely penalized and say, show me the bucks that you've laid out.
Well, but is that what you're saying? Are you saying that we've been so severely penalized from the Nightlife Association?
We're saying that we are already small business owners, and nightlife, even though in the aggregate it's over a $9 billion industry. Put that in context. There are 64 million admissions a year to New York City's nightlife establishments. That is larger than all of Broadway and all of New York City sports teams combined. So 64 million people coming and going, most of which are in Manhattan throughout the course of a year, are going to cause some noise. What the problem is that nevertheless, individually, these are small business owners for the most part, and we are living in a over-regulated, over-fined environment. This is one portion of the over-regulated environment, and yes, dozens of individuals get as a default violation when people are complaining about either noise inside the residential unit, and inspectors come and it doesn't meet the standards of a violation, so it's not the default, or simply there's an enforcement against nightlife because a residential building is now open on a block, with multi-million-dollar condominiums where before it was a manufacturing district, and they're complaining to their local politicians, or they're calling the mayor's 311 system. The police have to respond. The default violation, the easiest one for them to write, is a violation to the business owner under the least severe section of the noise code, this excessive noise or unreasonable noise, but it's still a half a day out of your time to go down to ECB and defend it, and it's a minimum $700 ticket the first time around. And it escalates from there. So that's real money and real time taken out for what is in effect an harassment ticket.
And I speak to all the people who constantly make complaints about all sorts of noise, but we're going to just talk about the restaurant and the nightlife. And nothing is done. Because if you look at the Department of Environmental Protection's records in terms of how many violations do they actually issue, and you compare it to the number of calls they go out on, and where the violation actually is issued, it's only a fraction of the number of times they go out.
With all due respect,
it's never reached higher than 18%
with all due respect, that's a straw man argument, because the agency that issues most of the violations under the section we're talking about is the police. So it's not DEP's records that you have to look at.
But
it's still the city.
It's still the city.
But 18%.
It's still the same noise code.
The city has only been able to issue 18% for all the times they go out. I think that's a sad commentary.
Well, that maybe
it's a waste of time,
people are in compliance with the law.
No, I don't think so. These are complaints.
Well, one thing is very clear here.
Right.
And that is...
we have to talk about it.
Well, and it's a good thing that we are. It's a very good thing that we are.